You hear this rubbish all the time.
He loves that word rubbish. Does the guy think he's British or something?
Inflation is caused by too much government spending, along with wage increases.
Okay, so second part first. Straw man! Wages lag behind inflation. That's why we say inflation is a regressive tax on the poor. It makes the products they buy more expensive before it can raise their wages to compensate for it. And we know inflation is caused by government spending. I've explained the mechanism in detail. I don't want to do it again, but I will if I have to.
Mega corporations raise prices to increase their profits.
So why did they all just decide to do it all at the same time? Why weren't prices already that high if they could have been profiting at that price level all along? Everyone who's ever seen a supply-demand graph sees through this.
They can do this because they face such little competition.
Except they have more competition now than ever before. During COVID, due to the lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, and job losses, people started creating businesses like never before. As of last October, 3.5 years after the start of the pandemic, applications for new home businesses are 59% greater than they were before the pandemic began. And that reversed a decades-long slide up to that point. In 2021, 22, and 23, 5.2 million business applications were filed, a 1/3 increase from the comparable period leading up to the pandemic. That includes 500,000 in the last quarter of 2023. In fact, for the first time in 2022 and 23, the number of startups has surpassed the level they were before the Great Recession. Startups are forming at 2.5 times the rate they were before, more than making up for pandemic-era losses. And that's not showing any signs of reversing anytime soon. How many times can Reich sing the same old tune long after it started showing its age?
Worried about sky-high airfares and lousy service? That's largely because airlines have merged from 12 carriers in 1980 to only 4 today.
Is it? Or is it because Congress passed heavy regulations, both increasing costs and preventing competition? Why is it that he never presents an example from the free market? Why don't you look at the major trends in open source driving innovation across industries, including Linux, PyTorch, TensorFlow, all sorts of others that are revolutionizing the way people do business? When it's left free and unregulated, competition and innovation booms. In fact, open source development platform GitHub is now being used by over 100 million developers, and even big tech companies like Meta are embracing open source.
Concerned about drug prices? Between 1995 and 2015, 60 leading pharmaceutical companies merged to only 10.
In one of the most heavily regulated industries ever. I mean it! Every single time he picks an industry heavily regulated by his precious government. And I'm just reminding you all that this guy was Bill Clinton's labor secretary. He knows this.
Upset about food costs. 4 large companies now control 85% of beef processing, 70% of the pork market, and 54% of poultry.
For which you can blame the USDA. What does any of this have to do with inflation anyway? Less than a minute in, and you've already forgotten the subject of your own video? He keeps on like this, I'm skipping. They're all heavily regulated industries, some of them highly unionized. Regulation and unionization that's supposed to prevent this very problem.
Responsibility for fighting inflation lies with the Federal Reserve, which raises interest rates to slow the economy when prices rise.
I guess I'm gonna have to explain it again. This year, Congress is projected to run a $2 trillion deficit. That means they'll be selling $2 trillion worth of government bonds this year. That's $2 trillion in additional demand for loanable funds. Supply and demand works in the loanable funds market too, with the exception that the price is the interest rate. Increasing demand increases price, so in this case, that additional demand pushes up interest rates. That is why the interest rates go up. To prevent that, the Federal Reserve increases the supply of loanable funds by creating new money and putting it in the loanable funds market through the discount window. If the Fed wants interest rates to stay the same, that means they'll have to increase the money supply by $2 trillion to match deficit spending. In times of inflation, they need to pull back on that. But if Congress doesn't pull back on spending, then the Fed won't be creating enough money to counter Congress's effect on interest rates. That's why interest rates rise. The Fed doesn't raise interest rates like Reich just claimed. They pull back on money creation and interest rates rise as a result. If Congress passed a balanced budget, the Fed could pull back on money creation entirely and interest rates would stabilize with no inflation. Any first-year macro student can understand this. Reich has to work on a kindergarten level. Man, how long have I been yammering for? Almost 6.5 minutes? And Reich is only 1.5 minutes in. Brandolini's law strikes again.
But this causes more unemployment, keeps wages low, and harms many working people.
Yes, which is why we shouldn't have an inflationary monetary policy!
An important way to avoid inflation would be to fight it at the source.
Government!
Break up monopolies using antitrust laws so that a handful of private companies can't artificially raise prices.
I think I know why Reich loves using the word rubbish so much. His brain's full of it! So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.